Good morning. We are here again with Midweek Metaphysics. I am Shey Khandro, and we have an exciting guest with us here today. We have in the house, well, actually not in the house, on our Zoom feed, Corrie Cooperman. And Corrie is a beautiful expression of a display of healing in a variety of modalities, a bridge of Western practices and ancient practices from other parts of the world. She is a RN, a registered nurse. She is a professional astrologer. She is also a shamanic healer. She has had a lifelong interest in healing and has been a practitioner in many forms. She started on a very traditional path as a registered nurse. She found herself in psychiatric settings, birth settings, public health, and over time she has intertwined these disciplines with energetic healing forms and in a variety of expressions, and is practicing now a form of shamanic healing, and we're going to learn more about that. It's fascinating what she brings to the table with an exploration of intuition and energy manipulation as a way of producing healing. So in just a moment, let us slip on over to the Zoom waiting room and bring in Corrie Cooperman. Hi, Corrie. Do we have your,
There we go.
There we go.
Hello, Shey.
Hi, good morning. So great to have you here. Thank you for coming. We are all excited to hear about some of these different experiences that you have woven together as a healing practitioner. And I would love to know a little bit about how you what is your story? How did you get into some of this work?
Some of this work, it was really an evolution. You know, I started out as an RN. I went to San Francisco State and, did 4 years and became an RN. But early on, I think because I got pregnant, I was married, thank goodness, and got pregnant and got very interested in Lamaze. At that time, it was a form of natural childbirth. And that really led me on a different path, a path of more alternative healing, alternative sources for wellness. And so I guess that would be my beginning.
Yeah, so you set off on a very traditional path of obviously a juicy heart if you wanted to be in service and in healing through being a nurse, and then you were married and had children and like that, but it was this exposure to what might be possible through natural modalities that kind of sparked maybe a further interest.
It came from the outer world in. Absolutely. But once it came in, it took.
It stayed around. I mean, it sounds like when I look at your bio and I see the different places that you've traveled on your journey of, who am I and what am I doing in the world and such. Now, you're also an astrologer, and it's my understanding you've been studying for many years as an astrologer.
Well, this is true, Shey. This one came in from the outer world too. It was a difficult time in my life where I had been a successful Aston patterning body worker. It's an offshoot of Rolfing, and my wrist started giving out. And so the work was getting harder to do. Yeah. And at the same time, a client brought me a recording of an astrologer in Santa Fe who wove together astrology with health information. And what can I say? I got very fascinated. I went and trained with her for a short while, and then read every book that I could. And I have a feeling that perhaps I was an astrologer before.
Yes.
I do.
Because very familiar, didn't it?
Yes, very familiar. And And I was able to absorb it, I think, faster than would be normal. So that's my explanation.
Now, with astrology, and combined with, I'm thinking that your own interest in astrology was inspired by the weaving of the health
Yes.
benefits that could be accomplished for people. What have you seen, and what do you feel? How does astrology for you relate to um, the idea of healing? How can people use that for enhancing their health and their well-being?
Well, that's a beautiful question. Uh, I have really gravitated towards focusing on the emotional, mental health healing in my astrology work. And it's a beautiful tool, a divination tool, if you will, a beautiful tool, very rich tool for assisting people in seeing how they can navigate around some challenges that perhaps they came in with, because that's what astrology uses, is the birth chart, the birth, a time of when you were born and where. And there are gifts that show up, talents that show up, life purpose that shows up, but also some challenges show up, generally in the emotional and psychological realms, sometimes in the health realms. But I seem to have gravitated towards the emotional and psychological. And it's been people, when they definitely, when they hear the challenge I'm bringing up, they're very aware of it.
Yes.
But what astrology offers is some pathway to work with it more productively and move along with it, so that it, instead of it being a challenge, it turns into a source of power.
That is really a beautiful thing. The idea, I think that more and more these days, the conversation around emotional intelligence and being able to manage our emotions is more prominent. It's a more prominent conversation, and it seems to me that it's a very powerful way of managing, navigating, engaging with one's life, if one can really understand some of those energies and how they're influencing our circumstances.
So aptly said, yes.
Now, one of the things that also intrigues me about what you do is you've gone from traditional nurse and through a variety of modalities to shamanic healing, and that sounds so mysterious and all, and yet there, in our medical system, sometimes other possibilities aren't really considered. And so I love this opportunity to explore this with you a little bit. And I'm curious about the relationship between astrology and the shamanic healing. I think you have some ways that you blend those two.
Yes, even though they don't on the surface seem very blendable, but it was really through discovery of, living in Sedona, we have visitors. And when visitors come, they may only be here for 2 days, and they want to have both an astrology reading and a shamanic session. Well, I always considered those very separate. But the visitors, again, from the outside, encouraged me to do them all in one day. And what I found was that the astrology reading opens up the material, especially, as I mentioned, the emotional and psychological material, that then can be taken straight into the shamanic healing session, so that the session actually starts out at a deeper place and can then move more deeply into the healing and helping, assisting the person in making a shift. So I
Wow.
call it a day of insight.
That sounds incredibly powerful. And for anybody out there who's listening, and thank you for being here. And I want to invite you to take a little note right now. Corrie Cooperman, her website is Corrie Cooperman. That's CorrieCooperman.com. And you can learn a little bit more about what she's up to. I'll share this information again at the end. But if anyone's inspired by this idea of astrology and shamanic healing, please make a note of that, because it's not a common practice of a day of insight. So it offers something special. And what, when you think of shamanic healing and you think of energy work, can you talk about how shamanic healing might differ from some of the other trainings or modalities that are available out there? What is it?
Mm.
What benefits does it bring to people?
Very good. Well, first of all, in terms of how it differs, it really is animistically based. It works with the spirits of nature. When I do a session, I start by having my client pick a stone from my sack, my sacred sack called a mesa, of stones that are devoted only for healing. And that stone is used in the session. I'll call upon ancestors or a ancestor of the tradition to come in and assist during the session. I open the 4 directions before starting. So these are all unique, I do believe, to shamanic healing. I certainly didn't do them in other forms of healing work that I did.
I've never
Not
gone
in
to the doctor and have them open up the 4 directions.
Yes. We also visit, a very special place to receive information that will be of help to the client, and also of how to focus the healing. We visit the lower world. And in shamanic world, the lower world is a very benevolent place. Where there's beautiful streams and plants that can have messages. There's a gatekeeper of the lower world that can provide insight into the direction the session should take.
Wow.
So all of those things are very shamanically oriented.
Now, is the lower world, could you talk a little bit about that? Is it because I think a lot of times when we think of the lower world, we think of darkness and we think of fire and maybe something that's or unconscious, challenging, that kind of thing. But streams and plants doesn't sound that way to me.
No, it doesn't. No. Yeah. And in some religious circles, the lower world is even worse. It's hell. So this is a very different way of looking at the earth and the resource it can provide, because the lower world is inside the earth. And when I'm ready to travel down there during a session to receive information, to do more healing, it's a beautiful place. It has a stream, it has flora and fauna, it has rooms. It has rooms that I can choose to enter. The room of gifts, the room of treasures, the room of passion, the room of contracts, because sometimes people make a contract when they're very young that serves them then, especially if they're in a difficult situation when they're very young. But it probably likely doesn't serve them in their life now. It's more restrictive. And so I can see that contract, bring it back, share it with the client, and assist them in rewriting it, because I always want to.
Right.
Yes. And then there's, a chamber of wounds where I can visit to see just what was the source of the problem, the issue the client is bringing to me now. What was its original source? And entering the chamber of wounds, it can appear in a picture form. For healing, for information, and then for healing, because we just don't want to learn. We want to make a shift in the energy field of the client.
Right.
Yes.
So you're saying that there are maybe contracts, commitments, old stories that we are living from at this point that don't serve us, that are keeping us in a more limited place in our lives. And so the opportunity with a healing like this is to actually go in and with a guide, I know for myself, I can't always see things because they're so close or so woven into my beliefs and my perspectives and perceptions. So you help people you show it to them from the outside, and they can maybe create a new relationship with those
Absolutely.
things. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's really a beautiful piece of the work. And like, for instance, I'm thinking of a client who, because of her difficult circumstances when she was young, she made the contract, I will be invisible. Now, that served her well then, but as an
Right.
adult wanting to form intimate relationships, it didn't serve her.
Right.
And bringing that more to consciousness, that's often referred to as shadow work, of something being brought to consciousness that we have as a way of operating that we don't realize. But once we see it, we can definitely begin to shift it, recognizing that it holds us back.
Yeah, and that process of shadow work, I've always found that kind of intriguing, and
Mm.
have had some experiences myself with peeking into places and finding things that were driving my show that I didn't really realize were even happening. So
Yeah.
it sounds like that. How does one know if shadow work would be something that they would be, that would benefit them?
That is a good question. Um, I think if a person has the repetition of circumstances in their life that are not pleasant or not
Uh-huh.
happy producing, then likely something is afoot.
Right.
May be hidden from them, or Freud used that word, the subconscious, I believe. He had the unconscious, the subconscious, and the shadow work brings certain ways that we've gotten in habits of doing. It brings it to consciousness.
And then from that place,
Mhm.
one is able to make some new choices. What does
Absolutely.
one do with that once they find it?
Yes, the minute that it's seen, it's almost like a shift takes place. It's like, oh my goodness, yes. And then a person can work on it on a uh, conscious level.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. That all sounds very intriguing. My background is in the Tibetan Buddhist spiritual practices and the philosophy and lifestyle. I was ordained as a Buddhist nun for about 15 years, and
Mm.
had the opportunity to look deeply at that into that tradition. And there are very much in Buddhism, there is that exploration of the realms of consciousness beyond what we see and feel in our day-to-day life. And it seems that it is such an important part of our journey to explore those things, to understand them, and be willing to be open to some of those things that maybe we don't see and that we don't address in our traditional medical system. So the energy work would be important in that way. But particularly with shamanic healing, I'm intrigued. The roots of that are Peruvian, is that correct?
In my case, it is shamanism, and it's interestingly that delving into the lower world exist in several traditions throughout our world that are native traditions. So I've been trained in a Peruvian approach to healing. Yes, to Peruvian shamanism
Right.
through Alberto Villoldo, who went down there as a graduate student when he was studying anthropology, and he went down there as part of his coursework, and got captured in a good sense by what he saw in the way of how healing took place there.
Yes, that's so
Mm.
beautiful. I love that we can get anywhere in the world now, and we can learn about other cultures and practices and open our minds and open our hearts to other ideas. So how did you get involved with the shamanic side of things?
Right, yes. Sweet me. It just seemed like it wasn't quite my style. But what happened was, again, from the outside, my husband brought home a book written by Alberto Villoldo, and somehow he didn't read it, but it was sitting out, and
Good
I
for
started
you.
reading it. Yes, I started reading. I said, "Oh my goodness, he's talking about what I have perceived in the way of energy and how it works and how it can be used for healing." healing. It was just like speaking to, it was resonating with something I felt I already knew, but hadn't verbalized, hadn't brought to
And
consciousness.
I'm always in deep respect and even a little awe for people that are exposed to something like that, that's new, and but it resonates with something and then they take action on it. That's
Mm.
amazing to me, that you know, something that was seemingly foreign but felt a little familiar, and then you decided to go deeper into that.
Well, thank you. Now I did tiptoe. I did. I first I scanned to see what Alberto was doing because his
Fair
training
enough.
2 years long, and I wanted to know more about who this person was. So he was teaching a weekend course at Esalen, and I flew out there to take it and was very impressed with who he is as a person, as a teacher extraordinaire.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I applaud your courage, and I can see where it's bringing benefit to lives of many other people as you do that. You, in a conversation that we had, you referred to yourself as a reluctant healer. Would you talk about that a little bit?
Oh my goodness. Um, yes, I can, Shey. You know, it's a little embarrassing, but even though I went through the whole 2-year training, and it's rather extensive, it includes a trip to Peru to do hiking in the sacred mountains there with the shamans of the
Wow.
mountain. Yeah, it's a very thorough training. So I really, you know, was not quite ready to start a practice, but the practice came to me. I was asked to work at a certain institution and do shamanic healing there. Obviously, a fairly alternative healing institution, and as a result, it's called the sanctuary at Sedona.
Oh,
Just say it,
amazing place.
yes,
Amazing
amazing
place.
place for addictions and also for some for mental wellness, also
Yes.
for people who want to explore on a deeper level.
Their approach is so comprehensive.
Mm,
And one of the things that struck me so beautifully about it was when Dean did a TED Talk back in 2017, and he talked about being recovered. So their modality or their practice, their philosophy is not that you are an addict and you're sort of stuck with that label for your whole life. It's an experience that you had, and you can find your way through that and live a more empowered life. I have a great deal of respect for the work they do there.
oh yes, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But through working there for many years, seeing each client every week, I developed a more comfort level. But I think the reluctance was that when you do a shamanic session of this kind, you don't know what you're going to do in that session. I have to listen and listen for guidance, listen for my own vision of what I'm seeing energetically, where the blockage might be, listening carefully, paying good attention to my client, and then deciding what track, what of the many choices I have in my toolbox, what am I going to use? Is it going to be soul retrieval? Is it going to be a generational healing? Is it going to be a cutting the cord of someone who's still with them and isn't helping? And I think that nervousness about, wow, is this going to work? What's going to happen? That's the reluctant part, as well as having to dig a little deeper into that shadow space in people's lives when warranted. You know,
Yeah.
that wasn't comfortable at the time.
Yes, that's probably, that takes a lot of courage too, a willingness to make yourself vulnerable in that way.
Mm.
Thank you for that. I'm intrigued by, and we may have to do another session sometime, because I'm quite intrigued by what you're saying about choosing modalities that would be appropriate for the moment. So it's almost like your apothecary is a variety of different energy systems or modalities that would actually, you'd call on, you know, you wouldn't what you maybe prescribe for the moment. It's not a pill or an ointment. It's an energy thread, or, you know, addressing the energy of the circumstance.
Oh, that's beautifully spoken and so accurately said. Yes, that's exactly what one has to stay very alert. Very,
Yeah.
very alert. Yes.
And trust yourself, or you trust
Mhm.
not the outer ego self, but trusting that higher energy that is a part of each of us, that I don't know what I would call it. I guess the spirit, I don't. What do you call? Have a name that you call that?
I have an overall name of divine guidance,
I love it.
and
Yeah.
trusting that that will come in. Uh,
Yes.
it does come in. Some of the reluctance was always wondering, will it come in this time? It's come in before, but will it again? But the divine
Right.
guidance, and then that divine guidance can have, a tree coming off of it, like an ancestral tree, and it get various, an angel can come in, a shamanic healer from the past can come in, a healer that is connected to my client can come in.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
Well, I love this. I think this is fascinating, and I look forward to learning more about what you do and having an experience of that. And I would like to encourage anyone who's watching, who, if you're with us live now, or if you're watching after the broadcast, please reach out. We would love to hear your comments in the thread, any thoughts that you have about what Corrie has shared, and if you would like to be in touch with her. Corrie is in Sedona, Arizona. Do you do any of your work in this format, or is it all in person?
Right now, just because of what's going on with COVID, for the next 3 to 4 months, I'll be working virtually in this format.
Oh, that's so
And I
great.
have great confidence. I've been labeling May as the comeback month, to be able to also work in person. But
Yes,
I have
great.
found that this format works extraordinarily well.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. I love this format, and we can reach anyone, anywhere, at any time. And that's one of the things that I think is so beautiful as we pull ourselves together as a global community and
Mhm.
address the healing and discovery and all of that. I'm so happy you've been with us here today, Corrie. I appreciate you so much. And please visit Corrie Cooperman at CORRIE COOPERMAN.com. And we have the website in the feed, in the body of the text for this broadcast. And so please reach out and let us know what your thoughts are about all of this. Thank you. Thank you,
It's been
Corrie.
a true pleasure, Shey. Thank you so much.
We will talk again soon.
All right.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Bye, darling. And let's see, I'm going to say just a word or two more to the folks that are here with us. My name is Shey Khandro. I'm an artist here in Sedona, a bit of a philosopher, and definitely a lifelong explorer of the ideas of energy, how the world works, how relationships work, how is this that we are all connected as one heart, one being, one world. Thank you again for coming. Enjoy your week and celebrate every moment. Thank you so much.